Is watching the rest of the playoffs from home, and Robert Kraft has some decisions to make, which had us wondering who deserves more credit for the last 20 years, Brady or Belichick. Former Patriots quarterback Drew Bledsoe weighed in on the futures of both. Take a listen.
I do think there's some intrigue probably on both sides of that thing, though, that to see if they can do it without the other guy, you know, for Tommy to see if he can win without Bill, and for Bill to see if he can win without Tommy. I think there's probably some intrigue on both sides of that thing to see, you know, where the credit really lies in that situation.
So much talk about who will get the credit. Carson, are you buying Brady and Belichick both want to win on their own separately?
I'm buying that Bill does, but for Brady to be 42 going on 43 and now to go out on his own and try to do it on his own.
A lot to ask.
If he was 32, I think you would still see that in Tom, but he knows where his bread is buttered, and it's with Bill Belichick, especially at age 42.
You said something very interesting in the very beginning there, that you think Bill does want to show he can do it on his own. We've never seen Brady without Belichick. We've seen Belichick a number of times without Brady. His whole stint in Cleveland, his first year in New England, and then 2008 when Brady blows out his knee, they win 11 games. That's a good thing. The fact that they had won they were 16-0 the year before puts a little damper on it. And then the Deflategate year, 3-1 with a young Jimmy Garoppolo and an even younger Jacoby Brissett. How much of that do you think feeds into Belichick wanting to say or wanting to show, listen, Brady's the greatest quarterback of all time, but I can do this without him?
I think all of it shows that. You know, like you said, he has not had success without him, and he'll always have that hanging over his head as he goes into retirement. So before Bill does hang him up and decide to walk away from the game, I think he absolutely wants to prove himself without Tom.
You know, I think it's kind of crazy to try to separate the two. I think that Bill Belichick understands one thing, that he hasn't won without Tom. He understands also that he was going to have to play at some point without Tom Brady. Really, when you look at this season, he played without the help of the Tom Brady that we all know and love all season long. He hasn't played well all season long. And so I think if you're Bill Belichick, you're saying, hey, I know I'm going to coach for another 5 to 10 years. Tom Brady's not going to be the Tom Brady that we knew for 5 to 10 years. And if I'm Tom Brady, I'm saying, why would I want to? Why would I want to play without the best coach in the NFL for the last 20 years? Why would I want to go into a situation where there's so many unknowns? If he goes to L.A., there's a bunch of unknowns there in L.A. They have a bunch of talent, but there's still a bunch of unknowns. And I'm telling you right now, at the end of my career, I didn't want to go to San Francisco. There's a whole new thing and a fear when you change the team that you were drafted with, that you've been with your entire career, to go to a different franchise. Would you have wanted that at the end of your career? You played for a few teams, though.
I think when I look at his situation, I compare it back to Brett Favre when he went to Minnesota, and he had a young Adrian Peterson, Percy Harvin. You look at the defensive line they had, the offensive line they had. So, you know, there's an aspect where Brady's going, man, I'm not getting separation on the outside. Julian Edelman's my #1 target, a great player, but if he can go to a place maybe like the Chargers, like you're talking about, with Melvin Gordon in the backfield, the receivers they have, the offensive line, you know, I think that will be appealing to him, especially being, you know, a California guy going back to L.A. and surrounding himself with some talent that he hasn't had around him the last handful of years.
So that leads me to this. I was going to ask, who do you think Nick needs more in order to be successful? You would say probably Tom Brady, but if you give him the amount of weapons that I know you don't seem to think that he needs all those weapons.
Sure.
Or Bill Belichick, it seems like he would need more to see where the team is right now in order to be more successful. Which of these two needs more around him?
To be fair to Brady, it's an unfair fight, because as a coach, you just get better every year. You learn more every year. And Belichick's been the best at taking things he learned in the 80s. We talked about in the Super Bowl last year. They took a defensive front from the New York Giants in the late 80s. He was able to implement it in last year's Super Bowl. Your skills don't deteriorate. You get better as long as your mind is still sharp. As a player, after usually the age of about 33, for Brady it appears to have been after the age of about 39, you start to tail off. So at this point in his career, obviously Brady needs more help. It's not, to me, that's not a fair comparison when we're doing the Brady-Belichick tale of the tape of, well, if they do split up, one would, of course, anticipate that Belichick will continue to have more success because Belichick is not the oldest coach of all time, while Brady's trying to become the oldest quarterback of all time. And so to be fair to Tom, he is going to be 43 years old. So, of course, he does need some help. I don't think their failure of the offense was entirely about the lack of weapons around him. I think a lot of it was they have a 42-year-old quarterback. But I'll spin that to you and what you were referencing with the Chargers. You were not 42 years old. But when you got to Arizona and you've got arguably the second greatest receiver of all time in Larry Fitzgerald. One of the other things we were talking about during the break was Fitzy going 75 yards to start in overtime of a playoff game against the Packers. How much easier, as you no longer have quite the physical tools you had early in your career in Cincinnati, does it make it for an aging quarterback to have legitimate playmakers on the outside?
It's as important to have those playmakers on the outside as it is to have those guys up front that are really, really good and really physical and give you that extra time. But Tom's at a point in his career where he can't throw the deep digs consistently. He can't throw the deep square outs, the comebacks, all those routes that when you're 28, 29, 32, you can complete those. Get the ball out. That's why he loved having Antonio Brown there. He can throw Antonio Brown a noun route, which is just where the receiver stands up, catches the ball, makes somebody miss, and gets blockers down the field in front of him. And, you know, it's a 5-yard pass that ends up going for 15 or 20 yards. So Brady needs those easy completions, those third down completions. He can throw screens and get the ball to elite playmakers to get him more yardage. He doesn't have the same zip on the ball and the same arm strength he has. He needs more guys around him.
When you watched him this year, if he did go to a team like the Chargers that has those weapons, and let's assume they have adequate blockers up front, they had dealt with injuries on the offensive line this year, let's assume they have health. How good do you think he can be at age 43?
I think with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and those monsters they have outside, two real threats, guys you have to game plan around. And they can add another guy. They've got a great tailback. They can add another guy up front. They get a tight end. You know, at 42, you can still see Tom Brady being one of the better quarterbacks in the league with great talent around him. Without great talent around him, he's not the same Tom Brady we're used to seeing.
Just out of curiosity, what do you think he's going to do next year? What do you think he wants to do?
I think it's going to be really interesting to see how things go down between him and Bill. He's not done. I don't think he's done. He knows he can still play at a high level. There's still accolades and statistics and things for him to chase another Super Bowl. I think at 42 and being in the same place for so long, there's some excitement about going to LA or wherever that team is, that next team may be. There is some excitement. There is some reason for concern, a new offense, a new place to live, my kids, my schools, all those things. But when you think about an 8-month or a 9-month season, when it's all said and done, it's worth taking a shot to maybe win one more Super Bowl with the right talent around him.
All right, Carson is here to discuss the FedEx Air and Ground NFL Players of the Year awards. Tell us about the nominees, Carson.
Yeah, it's a great year. I mean, the quarterbacks, you got Russell Wilson, Lamar Jackson the year he had. Patrick Mahomes is in it again, who won it last year. And my pick, I'd love to see who you like on the ground. I think Derrick Henry's going to win it, but it's been such a fun year to watch these guys. And FedEx is, I'm a former FedEx winner for the Air Player of the Year award, so it's something that's special and close to my heart. And the voting is currently open. It closes on the 30th, so get your votes in now. You can vote on the NFL Twitter page. You can vote at NFL.com/FedEx, so get your votes in now.
Who do you got for the ground player?
I love what Derrick Henry did towards the end of the year, but, I mean, you can't argue with Christian McCaffrey and the production that he's had. Having over 1,000 yards rushing and 1,000 yards receiving, something that I did in college, it's almost impossible to do in the NFL. You have to get
rookie
something told me you were going to love Christian McCaffrey's type of game over the 6'4", 250-pound bruiser. The running back competition, and nobody mentioned Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb at 4:55 p.m. Eastern time on the final weekend of the year was the NFL rushing champion until Derrick Henry